Welcome to the STR Data Lab.
Hello, and welcome to the latest edition of the STR Data Lab. I'm Jamie Lane, Chief Economist at AirDNA, and I'm joined today by guest Niko Karstikko, CEO and co-founder of Bob W. Niko.
Thanks for having me here, Jamie. Good to be here. I wish it wasn't virtually. I know you're Atlanta based, and I've missed that place. Used to live there, so but at least virtually. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, it's great to have you. I've heard so much about Bob W. over the last few years, like going to Europe for work, for conferences. I'm really excited to sort of dig into the history and who Bob W. is. Still
Great guy,
confused by
great
that.
guy.
And then, and what you guys are looking to do going forward. So, and maybe we'll start with just what and who is Bob W.
So yeah. I mean, I think Bob. Uh, First, well, I mean, there's a whole story behind this, but maybe let's start with trying to keep it simple. I mean, we're the answer to the Airbnb generation that's growing up. We're a hybrid of a hotel, best of the hotel experience and best of the short stay rental experience. So from the hotel, the branded consistency, the scale, the quality, the commercial resources, and from the short stays, the amenities, kitchens, washing machines, dishwashers, but also the amazing hosting, as well as the live like a local part, and done that in a very professional way. That all's packaged up into this lean luxury brand called Bob W. That uh, Bob W is the perfect host. Best host you've ever had times 10. He's an unbelievable guy. He speaks, 8 languages. I think he's could be even at 9 or 10 now. He's really quick to pick them up. Clearly well educated, but a man of the people. We're guessing something like Oxford or Harvard. We can't quite put our finger on it. And he's just the most, like, he's figured out the details in the apartments, and he's put a lot of love, because he's got a lot of love for the community, for ecology, etc. And you can see that footprint in the apartment. And unlike a normal host, Bob doesn't sleep, doesn't need a lunch break, doesn't go to Muay Thai boxing at 7 p.m. on a Friday night when you're trying to check in. He answers your messages on less than 2 minutes on average, and is just unbelievably responsive and just a great guy. And of course, how that happens is under the hood. We're a full stack hospitality operator and brand that runs on technology that we built ourselves, that on the one hand gets rid of 6/7 of the employees of a comparable apart hotel or extended stay operation. And 6/7 is technology. So on the one hand, we never screw things up, and take human error out of this very labor intensive, human erroneous industry.
Yeah.
And I made up a word there, but and 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 then the other part is, of course, we elevate that experience by having this fully digitized customer experience, with self-service app that our generation have learned to love. That amazingly, mainly amazing chat-based customer service, being Bob, who is very much not a back office thing, but it's a front and center part of the experience. And finally, we've got a marketplace. So we've got breakfast, gyms, early check-ins, late checkouts, all these different kinds of things that are either services through the neighborhood within a few hundred yards, or virtually, like the early check-ins, late checkouts, which we do because we play the Tetris game better of what to clean and where, and creating hours in the day, which we can then give to you, or sell to you. And that's really Bob. So it's that hybrid category of hospitality. And today, we operate across Europe in 10 countries, 17 cities, one of the fastest growing hospitality brands in Europe, and I suspect internationally as well. And really, it's about being that sort of like a more professional institutional answer to the Airbnb generation that's growing up, without still not killing that magic, but actually quite the opposite. That's really Bob today.
So what I'm hearing is that Bob and Alexa might be friends or acquaintances.
Yeah, well, Alexa's a bit intrusive and creepy. Bob's a great guy. You wouldn't get
Okay.
those same vibes from him. Nothing against Alexa. I'm kidding, Amazon peeps.
Okay.
He's-
So, sitting here in the US, and most of our listeners are US based, the concept of a part hotel and seems very Eurocentric. But when I go in and look at your units, like they seem pretty familiar. So, maybe describe and one and you've gone to school and university in the US. So, how do you describe a part hotel when you're talking to an American?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, the oversimplification, it's an extended stay. But it's unlike in the U.S., which is usually on a high, side of a highway next to a McDonald's and Taco Bell. It's in the city centers, and maybe just a background to the viewers. I mean, I spent 10 years having up to 7 apartments and doing the STR game of individual apartments. Now, in this case, of course, it's a commercial property that's correctly zoned, so permit, apart hotel permit, or in Spain, apartamentos turísticos or whatever it might be. So it's got the correct zoning. So in Europe, the legal landscape is different. So what you need to often have is you need to have a commercial permit, and that's usually to do with zoning, and then you need to have the right zoning. So that means we're typically an apart hotel, which is in a way the physical product that we have is the most closest to. Think of it as a hotel with kitchens in the rooms and washing machines or shared washing machines downstairs in the lobby area. And in our case, we don't need the shared spaces because we have that virtual marketplace that brings the neighborhood services to life. So we don't actually need that shared space. So a lot of times we tell a landlord, "Hey, why don't you rent it out to somebody who pays more rent on the ground floor, like a restaurant or a shop." So, and those are one last thing about apart hotels, of course, just like extended stays in America, they're multi-units. So we average about, what would I say, 70, 80 units per property. So you obviously then have, a larger scale. And that also means that when you have the larger scale, you get certain benefits out of that. You're buying 80 couches instead of one, and you could probably afford an interior designer to make it extra special and stuff like this.
Yeah. So maybe take us back to, and you mentioned that you had a few apartments that you got started with. What market was that in? How did you sort of make the leap from and a few apartments to growing and into 17 markets throughout Europe?
Yeah, maybe if I share a little bit of my story because it's a bit
Yeah.
intertwined here from that perspective. So I'm a kid from Finland, from the capital Helsinki. I actually went to high school in London, in the UK, and then university in the States, USC, go Cox, and then went back in suit and tie career in Europe for a good chunk working at Berkshire Hathaway, so for Warren Buffett's NetJets company, and then in one of the largest banks in Europe, and the tie was getting a little tight around the neck. So, and I figured I wanted to be an entrepreneur. So I moved back to Finland, where university is actually free, even for foreigners, believe it or not. And uh, with the risk of pissing off your dear listeners who've got big big loans, college loans behind them, I totally feel for you guys. So college is free. Went back there and under the guise of starting a master's, which was the plan was to actually start a business, but you know, and I did, which was a fitness activities marketplace called Sportsitter. But I was always on the road. I started with an American dude based out of Bronx in New York, and so I was always on the road. So I had this new service that had landed in Europe called Airbnb. I was like, oh great, I'm going to make some money while I'm away, and started renting my apartment in Helsinki, in the capital, because I was always shuffling between New York and Helsinki. And then, I got a brother's investment apartment and my investment apartment, and then the family summer house, which is close by Helsinki, and stuff like this. And, amassed a little portfolio of apartments. Loved doing that. Loved hosting the people. Loved, of course, making that money. And it was just one of these things, like, even if I was stressed out about my startup, which was, venture backed and high paced, I would never have a problem, even at 11 p.m. night, taking care of guests. And then I exited my fitness activities marketplace in 2016, and I wanted to take a break. I wanted to go to Asia and try to find yin yang or Zen or whatever I could get my hands on. Trying to find some kind of peace out of this sort of startup madness, 6, 7 years and chasing dreams. and I try to figure out what to do with these apartments. And I figured, hey, I can take it completely remotely without a single employee. I've got 7 of them, but you know, I can go to Asia and chat-based customer service, 6 months of soap in the closet, a couple of a good robust to-do list for the cleaners, and a couple of good backup plans. Namely, my at the time broke brother who would do anything for $40, and he lived in the neighborhood. so, 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 so he was a great candidate. It would be a lot more expensive these days, but at the time it worked, and that's what I did. But at the same time, being a startup entrepreneur, you're always thinking these like, uh, you know, rethinking business models. That's what startups are. Sure, sometimes it's technology, sometimes it's new ways of looking at things. And you're like, man, this whole Airbnb world is such an amateur show that like on my part as well. Like if you were actually in control of the whole stack, the hardware, the software, the technology, you could create something that wouldn't just match the expectation of a hotel, but for this new generation of traveler who's mixing business with pleasure on the road, who ain't looking for a hotel, you could actually exceed those expectations if you had those resources to make it happen. And that's at that point, yeah, that was the sort of undercurrent. And then I went to Asia, traveled a lot there, spent 7 8 months there, and ended up, finding myself this fatigue of doing the random Airbnbs, the random short stay rentals. It was the hit or miss. Do you trust the host? Do you trust the pictures? Yeah, I trust the pictures, but it's in the ghetto. These common issues that we have, like, we both feel it from a host perspective and a guest perspective. It's just more work to it. A Hilton is a lot more boring, probably more expensive, and doesn't cater to you, but it's an easier choice to make. And, that fatigue started like translating. And then I started talking to my now German co founder, and just talking about this idea. What if we did something like midway through? What if we had took the best of these both worlds and really created something? And we started looking at the short stay rental market. Of course, there's a lot of fragmentation. There's no standards, no big brands, and we figured, okay, well, here's our opportunity. Unlike this consolidated hotel space, is actually take that thing to a next level. And of course, there's many ways and many companies and players who figured out different ways of adding that scale and professionalism, and even small hosts who've done a great job and built different kinds of niches. But our thing was, okay, hey, let's build the best of the hotel and best of the short stay experience. And that's how we got started. But first, nobody would give us a real building. Like, what are these 2 kids, one from Germany, one from Finland, and knocking on doors of big commercial real estate players and saying, "Hey, you want to lease or let me manage this $50 million building for you?" And they laughed us out the door. So we kept doing what I had done before. So we started the MVPs on like individual apartments in city centers in Helsinki, Finland. And then we heard our first break by having a friend of a friend in Tallinn, Estonia, which is one of the smallest countries in Europe, which is a 2-hour boat ride from Helsinki. And we heard that somebody from somebody, there was a deal that had fallen through in a apart hotel building. And we went there, and lo and behold, 4 months later, we've got our first building open. And then we got something in Helsinki, and then the thing started rolling. And today we've got 40 something, I'm losing count here, but 40 something apart hotels across the 17 cities, which I mentioned across Europe. And really the vision is to create the most loved hospitality brand. And we literally are Europe's best ranked international hotel operator. And we're not a hotel, but still based on public ratings. So we're super proud of that. And that's this obsession about having a 5-star experience, which technology does a pretty good job in making sure that we don't screw things up, causing those non-5 stars.
Yeah. No, that's a great story. So maybe getting into some of the details on how you were actually able to expand, because and no surprise, there's been a lot of American companies that have tried to do this same sort of thing, like build it's essentially branded short-term rental stays in multifamily buildings and expanded pretty quickly from, let's say, 2015 through 2020, trying to sort of build that next level experience stay. And a lot of them did it through lease arbitrage of essentially guaranteeing the building owner a certain amount that they're going to get every single month, and then go to try to make up the upside on renting out on a short stay basis. And great for the owner, not necessarily, and great for the operator in terms of being able to maybe expand quickly because you get a lot of owners once you've sort of built trust that they're willing to sort of give you the keys and let you go. But also, as we saw during COVID, like also built adds a lot of risk in that model, given that and travel could dry up and you can't make those lease payments anymore. So, how did you guys sort of expand in the beginning, and then how are you looking at sort of growing markets, and what does the business model look like today?
It's an interesting question. Today, we're a mix of leases and management agreements. Interesting anecdote is that in Europe, management agreements for these commercial bigger properties doesn't happen often. It's just the
Yep.
way that the real estate funds are structured and stuff like this. It just doesn't happen. Like you either do leases or you got to own the building, or you're not going to get that many management agreements. And then and I don't want to badmouth any competitors. And in fact, I only genuinely wish the best for all of them, because what we as we are this young industry that our listeners and us and the competition that you were talking about as well represent, we need success stories out of this. The short stay rental space is absolutely massive, and now is the next
Yep.
wave of professionalization and consolidation and technology adoption, and just getting to that next level where we start to compete and in hopefully in many ways exceed with the hotel space, even though we aren't always directly competing with them, but in a similar world. So looking at first of all, for us, looking at leases and management agreements, at the end of the day, the world is full of companies that lease stuff and do their business within the lease premises. There's nothing new about that part. And what makes it risky is if you pay too much rent. And that and this world is called an underwriting process. And you got to believe the numbers that you're able to do. And in our case, the technology, gives us even more leverage because, as I said, we have six seventh less staff than in comparable hotels making comparable nightly rates. So we're able to underwrite, to basically figure out how much rent we can pay and have a comfortable buffer, and that being a very healthy level that keeps the landlord happy and us happy, that if there's downside risks, we should be fine. So that's the number one premises, that if you're going to go lease arbitrage or lease to lease business, whatever you want to call it, that's the number one thing. And I come from a technology world where up until about a year ago, it was grow at any cost, man. Like, oh, just throw money at it. VCs throw money at it. Family offices throw money at it. Your cousin throwing money at you. Everybody's like, grow, grow, grow. That's all that counts. It's the sort of Uber generation, right, of companies. So I recognize that challenge when everybody's just grow, grow, grow. And you're thinking, yeah, well, okay, well, this is not a good deal, but it would be a flagship here in Toronto. Let's get this thing, and the next one will make money. But you're stuck with that thing for 20 years. So, I think I can see where this sort of VC fast startup growth mindset could really get people off the rails. And I'm really lucky to have a German co-founder who was a stickler with numbers from the get-go. I never came from the VC world, so he was always like, "Oh, a business is supposed to make money from the get-go." He would say that with a German accent, but I'm not going to attempt it. So effectively, that's a really, really important part of it. So what we're actually seeing is we're making a lot better money on the leases than the management agreements, which we love, by the way, because they're low risk, lower upfront cost, so lower location acquisition cost, all that stuff. But we're just simply, you don't get access to them as much in Europe. And of course, as we're looking to our footprint on a more global basis, we're hoping we can get more management agreements. Now, and then you talked about the pandemic, but that's the beauty of the STR space, which I hope many of our listeners have hopefully witnessed as well, is that it was a lot more resilient during the pandemic era, and that's really how we managed to convince our investors that even with the lease agreement, we were able to do well. So that's probably also this whole you at the end of the day, a business, the unit economics need to make sense, and that's true to all of our businesses. And if your lease payments are too high, the problem is it's never going to make sense in that building. You might make it up for it, but the other four buildings are doing great. But you have enough bad apples in that you're in a lot of trouble. So that's would be my comment to your question around the sort of the business models that did have a lot of lease elements. And the other comment around that is we are a huge believer in consistency, so that we're in a sector of hospitality that doesn't have standards. So we better bring the damn standard ourselves. And I think some of the competitors, you talked about the Americans ones, were kind of like, oh, we'll lease and manage anything. Now the problem is, if you lease and manage anything, where's the consistency? Where's the promise? And I think that's problematic. Now, don't get me wrong. Every Bob neighborhood is always branded by the neighborhood and looks different, but it's got the same utilities, same amenities, same lock system, same app, same customer service, same, cute details and useful, high utility details in there that are beautifully consistent. And that, I think those two parts have probably been some of that's been causing those challenges to that. Basically, too much VC money.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. I do want to ask about the VC money, but maybe and starting you talked about sort of unit economics and of those units. So as you guys are expanding and moving into new markets, you said you're in 17 cities. Like, how has this expansion happened? Is it just organically of like buildings that come available, you guys underwrite them and like, all right, now we're in whatever new city, and that, or is it very specific of like you're like, I think we would do well in this city. We're gonna really go in and put someone on the ground and work with a broker, try to find a building in that market.
Yeah. Well. First of all, I just bashed VC money here, but I mean we've taken in 70 million euros of funding too. Which I guess equates some just shy of 80 million bucks. But we I guess my point is that we've really been careful with what we're actually getting ourselves into in those long contracts, right? And that's we're just have outstanding profitability in the company, on a market level and on a group level as well. So that's different. But going into this, how do we expand? So we expanded. Of course, you needed the capital for it, but you know, of course, first you get where you can get to, and that's hence the Estonia and Finland, in the first places. We wanted to turn this to a global phenomenon, really a household name. That's this what you get answer in this fragmented space, and a brand that represents this new category, hospitality. So we thought, okay, first step is to do Europe, and we first of all chose a profile. So basically, we want to be in central or urban metropolitan areas that have some kind of relevance to our target audience, which is the 20 to 45-year-old urban middle class, mixes business with pleasure. Think hipsters, tech company employees, cosmopolitan
I know a
types.
few of those. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. The ones that frequent the Airbnbs of the world. And so that's the initial profile perspective. And of course, that when you're a metropolitan, you've got great access in terms of public transport, flights, trains, etc. So there was that part. And then we recognized nobody's going to give us big money to grow if we're just in the periphery of Europe, which is Finland and Estonia. And don't get me wrong, they're amazing countries, amazing locations, amazing attractions, and great business, but they're not the big mega cities and the big larger countries in Europe. So we immediately expanded when we had a little bit of bandwidth and a little bit of cash to our first property in London and Madrid. So sort of representing the sort of Mediterranean, and then of course UK. And so we figured out what's the relation. Does it add to the brand? Does it, how is the actual target market? What's the economics of it? How much, top line, what's our assumptions in terms of how much we're gonna the lease versus the actual ADRs and the RevPARs that we're able to deliver. And then what we call is we set the seed, because again, when you go into new markets, unlike the States, like, you don't have a relationship with the UK banks, you don't get a UK credit card. You don't get a bank guarantee, you don't get any of that. So the hardest one is the first property. So that's why we wanted to establish ourselves in these key markets, to be able to show that, first of all, the product works on a pan-European basis. It works in these high competition, bigger markets with tons of tourists and B2B travel. And then we looked at the individual property, and of course, or the market, then the individual property, and then we planted the seed. and that was our key. So a lot of times you have like banking and real estate's a regional thing. So you have like Spain, Portugal, Italy. Then you've got the Benelux countries. Then you've got the Nordic countries. Then you've got UK and Ireland. Uh, and those clusters seem to have the same big landlords and the same big banking group. So we planted that seed. Now, in saying that, of course, there was opportunistic stuff, like in Athens, Greece, which is, by the way, a great market, and tons of people from the north migrate south for tourism and for business purposes and other reasons. So there is a natural, now that we are start having that critical mass and that sort of horizontal coverage, that starts benefit our loyalty program and that mass of people that we're moving across the 17 cities today. But so we still have a very, very clear profile of metropolitan areas, central or urban with character is the focus that we have. So city centers, or urban with characters, basically the up and coming urban neighborhoods, and that's so we have that format. But of course, what's clear is the second building that comes into the same area is a lot easier because you're using the same contractual basis. Then from you all already know how the consumer behaves. You know how the OTAs are working in that region. And by the way, because we barely have any employees, but it's still less employees if I've got two buildings in the same city versus I got two buildings in two different cities. So then when you planted that seed, now we're focusing on bringing depth to the existing markets. So we just added our fifth building to Helsinki, for example, and in London we're, I think, 10 or 11. So we're really, really pushing heavy on that because it does affect profitability. I'm sure there's a lot of peeps on this podcast with a network of apartments and houses in the state that if you operate them in close enough proximity, there are savings to be made.
Yeah. No, that all makes sense. So you talked technology and VC, and in talking with founders in this space, that can sometimes be scary, right? Because I mean, as much VC money is out there, there's probably unlimited amount of tech that you could go in and build versus and use existing stuff out there, and the whole notion of what is your moat? Like, what are you building that makes you unique over and above just providing hospitality? So, how do you guys think about the need to sort of build your own technology versus leverage other technology that's already out there?
So, I mean, that's a super, super good question. I think, we even started this company as no code. Like we said, we're not going to build zero, we're going to build zero code the first year.
Yeah.
And this is coming from a tech entrepreneur. I've been having companies that we build code with for the last 13, 14 years. But it was because there's all this technology out there. And I would
Mhm.
say that there's, that maturity has improved, and you've got all sorts of access from, great PMS systems to plugins to add-ons, and to industry data, like with Air DNA, etc. And so we started with the notion is we're not going to build anything until we feel that we have something that we want to build that's not on the market, that can really add value to us and really be a USP, right? And we still do that build versus buy decisions today, and we buy a lot of stuff. I mean, we have our own consumer apps. We've got a parallel PMS that works with another off-the-shelf PMS. Why? Because we don't want to do all those integrations, and that PMS, that property management system, integrates into hundreds of things. So why the heck would we integrate into, I don't know, 10 of those things that we want to do? Instead, let's work with the PMS, and then we've got our own. So our software is basically a mishmash of things we can do better, and then a bunch of glue putting things together in a custom way so they're smarter working together. And that's how it works, right? And so no point in 2024, no point in building stuff unless it really adds value to you uniquely. And that goes everything from property management systems to data, for that matter.
Mhm. No, that makes sense. Is there anything on that side that you can say that, like, really and maybe sets you guys apart in terms of, like, things that you think you just do more efficiently or better because of something you developed in-house?
Yeah, I mean, I'll oversimplify, but the money that we make compared to comparable hotels making the same money, we have 1/7 of the employees on site. Now, 6/7 is technology. So our customer service is fully centralized out of Tallinn, Estonia, but it does not feel to the guests like some shitty back office, solution. It feels like it's front and center. So for us, it was about building a customer service team that's so finger on the pulse with you, that's so casual and so real, yet having those great tools. So when, dude X in Florence asks about hey, how does the microwave work? We've got, it on our fingertips, and we've got ready-made templates that, thanks to AI, is being built so that we can then shoot you an answer within a second. Basically, just the service person checking, okay, is this the legitimate thing? So that's an example where we focused on so much operationally, technology-wise, to build that customer service thing that really feels like you're talking to a buddy, like if your buddy who's got a nice beach house in Beaufort, South Carolina, and he's just sorting you out. He's not there, so we're sorting it out through Messenger or WhatsApp or whatever, right? And that's Bob, right? But that is technology. That is tooling for guest services team. And that means, the customer service team has barely grown now that it speaks all the languages and it has all these tools. While, last year we tripled in size in terms of revenues and in terms of units, units under management. So for us, that's one aspect. One aspect of the technology. The other one, of course, is this automation of the housekeeping aspect. So we basically play this Tetris game of who cleans what, where, what brings what kind of items in, so that we can customize each apartment for the needs of the guest based on, Jamie's profile is associated with a scent allergy. The scent gets taken out of the apartment, and who comes and cleans that place and when's it empty. And then we can create things like, so we have industry first, which we launched like 4 years ago, fully automated, instant, guaranteed early check-ins and late checkouts. So literally, we can promise you a month in advance or 5 minutes before you're about to arrive, if available, an early check-in, late checkout, because we play that Tetris game and create extra hours, which we can, promise you. And if we know we've got 10 of the same studios, statistically somebody's going to check out, we can make that 2 early check-ins happen. Even we know that 2 months in advance, we can guarantee it for you. So second part is that operational, just rethink, and that's what we built. And third one, we have 100% automated success rate in automated online check-ins. We call it the last check-in ever, and guests are just, it's a beautifully simple experience. Or believe it or not, we remember your credit card details, which is for some reason in every other app and industry that's not a norm, but for some reason the hotels don't remember who you are, what what your credit card details are, what your preferences are, and that's something. So we have that aspect, and then finally, then there's that marketplace. So we've got over a third of our guests buy an upsell product, which is starting to represent a good chunk of our revenues, and basically we sell early check-ins, late checkouts, 100% margin product, or we sell breakfast, which is 15-20% margin product, and a variety of other things where we bring that neighborhood to life and really support the local community and let you live like a local, and you get to put it on your company card as a bed and breakfast rate, for example. And that I think is a massive opportunity in the STR space, which is something that isn't utilized well enough, and there's some very interesting startups being built around that as well, giving you those tooling that you can do that. So I think that's something that we do, but that's something that's just scratched the surface of opportunity, because technology allows us to be a full service proposition without having the damn restaurant downstairs.
Yep. So, looking at your website, and it's clear that sustainability and plays a big part in the business. And coming from the hotel industry, sort of hear sustainability, and I sort of think about and hotels giving you the option to hang up your towel and not change
Yeah.
it so that they can save money and also say that they're sustainable. So maybe the question is how do you guys think about sustainability, and like what do you do to actually like fulfill that? And then secondarily, how, as an average host, do you think that someone could think about running their unit, their short-term rental, more sustainably?
Yeah. I appreciate you saying that and bringing up the topic. I think ultimately, a lot of times companies look like their founders, and from me and Sebastian, the German co-founder story, we've all went through a lot of personal journey and of understanding that the global ecosystem started to be more and more in peril, as is witnessed by all sorts of science and natural phenomenon, this kind of thing. So there was something that we personally cared about. And then when we got started on the business, we were certainly no experts, but it's like, holy crap, we're buying 40 couches. Should we buy sustainable couches? What is a sustainable couch? Okay, it's a sustainable couch, but it's being shipped from a whole nother country. How do we do that? And just this sort of, that turned into this sort of pragmatic quest of just doing things right from the get-go. And then actually in was it 2020 already or 2021, we became the world's first international climate neutral hospitality operator, which is, let's face it, it's buying offsets, aside from all the other things that we do, which I'll go into a second. But importantly, it's measuring. For you to buy the offsets, you measure what you do, right? And that was something that, we figured, including us, that the modern consumer is sick and tired of this greenwashing stuff and hearing hey, oh, we endeavor to do so much, insert nice adjectives, and by 2045 we'll make the planet greener, and then there's some beautiful sunset on a green hill somewhere, and you're like, okay, yeah, but what about the facts here? So we figured out, okay, what we're going to do is we want to publicize, find a unit or metric that makes sense, which is emissions per guest night, which you can read up all about on our website, which is the common denominator. Should I stay at a Hilton or a Bob W, or should I stay in the suite or this room or this apartment? And you can actually measure that. So we published it on a per apartment per unit level, so that consumers could make more educated decisions. Because, I mean, if you care about calories, I give you 2 chocolate bars, all equal, but the other one has 80 calories, the other one has 200. You care about calories, you're going to pick the 80 one, right? But you can't do that in a hospitality space or in many other industries. There's no apples to apples comparisons. And that's why, we publicize that and are actively pushing the industry to also start publicizing it as well, so that we can make apples to apples comparisons, so that we can have that positive race to the bottom as we push for net zero. And of course, our operations, we push our landlords to go for their top certifications, LEED and BREEAM, which is in Europe, the way that you get the most sustainable properties. We run on 100% renewable electricity, almost 0% single-use plastics, almost down to zero. Coffee is hard to keep fresh without plastic. And then we have recycling in every single apartment. We aim to have 2 pieces of secondhand furniture in every property to support the circular economy, and of course have the positive impact from that perspective. So we do things left, right, and center, and that as an operator, we rank as some of the we'll have some new data on that, which I can't publicize just yet, but it'll be on our site in a month or so, that we are really on the top tier in terms of the emissions footprint on a concrete per night basis. But what's important to understand, and we'll get to what the STR operators can also do, but what's important to understand is, whilst we are operators, and that puts us squarely in charge of operating emissions and the impact that we have there, the largest part of the climate donut of an operator is cooling, heating, electricity. Uh, how efficient is this building? And that is the number one impact that you can have. If you've got single glazed windows that let air out, and your air conditioning unit's on 9 months of the year, I mean, it's not a good outcome, right? So the number one thing, which is certainly doesn't come without cost, is to make do the right decisions when you are, and if you are renovating the apartments, to make the ecological choices, and buy the right electricity contracts, and do all of that, because that is the largest impact. I mean, picking the right soap has the right impact for, sustainability and other way, but it's like from an emissions reduction perspective. Of course, we can talk, depends on the soap. There's chemicals and there's other problems which measure something different, or should be measured in a different way. But the largest thing is the actual heating, cooling, electricity of the property. And then from an operating perspective, there are increasingly, first of all, I would encourage anybody who's got the resources to measure their impact, their climate impact. And when they do that, then there's a pretty obvious to-do list of what are the top things that you can do to reduce it. And of course, some of those things will cost a lot, some of them will cost less, and then you know which battles you can pick from that perspective. And finally, I would say this is, we did it because we felt a pinch in our heart that this is the right thing to do. But what we come to find is that that's translating to, I'm not necessarily saying better ADRs or RevPARs, but retention, loyalty, returning customers. And that, in the long run, will affect all the metrics as well. So whilst that wasn't the premises of us getting started in it, we are seeing clear signs that it's good for business too. And I think there you can only be early, and then likely legislation, everything else eventually will tell us all to do A, B, or C. So there's an opportunity to be an early adopter in sustainability, and I think it's a thing we should all do. So because this is a race we all need to win.
Yeah. How likely do you think it is that we'll get legislation soon in Europe that you have to actually track your carbon footprint or and emissions per guest or some metric?
So we are actually getting that introduced, that a company of certain size needs to do the tracking. So we would actually, so we've been doing since 2021 for 2020 numbers. And ultimately, there's a certain company revenue size that on an EU basis you need to start doing. So actually, I think this year would be the first time that we do. Now, that's starting to be a very large company that the requirement is for. But then also, it's what you do with that, right? Knowledge is power, and as we know with their DNA, as well as you've got actionable data, you can do something about it. But if you don't have data, you don't have anything to be actionable about either, or you're shooting in the dark.
So maybe talking a little bit about data, and we're coming up towards the end of our time now. So how are you feeling about the economic climate right now and visitors and your bookings? Like, and we've seen this huge summer in Europe. We're getting past now our, I guess we're in the middle of August, and July and August, peak season and throughout Europe. So how are you guys seeing business?
So I think the sentiment is a little bit the same as in Europe, as in the US, that it isn't just good times ahead. But
Mhm.
in saying that, we are seeing that we are kicking butt against all the hotel competition in the market. And I would like to think, being an optimist, that I think it's actually more broadly the STR space. There's a lot of we are a more resilient, a more flexible product offering than a hotel room. So I think that even though with the economic contractions, or certainly slowdowns, we are better placed for the recession or the slower turnaround, or hopefully a fast turnaround. But I think we grow anyways. But I actually think that we are a more sort of recession-proof product, and I'm talking, of course, about W, but I'm also talking more broadly of the STR space. And I think that if we as operators position ourselves in the best possible way, and don't just live off the high season tourist, we're in a great place. So I'm actually very optimistic, even though I think it's safe to say that you're looking at US um, joblessness numbers, unemployment numbers, and European unemployment numbers, where we still necessarily haven't quite hit the bottom there, and that's gonna trickle into travel. But we're not just grabbing the tourists; we're grabbing, we're grabbing the relocations, we're grabbing the B2B travel, for the temporary homes, the gray areas between a home and a hotel. And I think that if we play to that advantage, us and more broadly this space will be in a good spot, even if it ends up being economic headwinds ahead.
No, I totally agree. I mean, there's so much optionality in this industry for what type of guests that you can accommodate. We've seen this industry as being very adaptable, right? So this has been amazing. And sort of, is there anything else that you want to share? Can you let people know how to find you, how to find Bob W?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I've got nothing to share aside from this upbeat, positive feeling about the future of the STR space. Important to remember that at times, and not look at too much of the headlines. And yeah, of course, if you guys are coming to visit, hit us up on bobw.co, and would be a pleasure to have Bob host you.
Awesome. Well, I look forward to having Bob hosting me in the future, and seeing you. I'll be in Europe this fall for a few conferences, so hope to see you around.
Yeah, see you on the circuit.